Welcome back to the Culture Curriculum Chat podcast. I'm your host, Jebeh Edmunds, and today's episode is all about the power of reading beyond our comfort zone. And I have in the guest chair Mrs. Nita Creekmore, the author of Read Outside Your Bubble. And if you have been a ride or die listener of the podcast, Nita is making her second round in the guest chair. So excited to have Nita. And if you are new, Nita Creekmore is an educator, a literacy advocate, an instructional coach, and author of this new thought-provoking book called Read Outside Your Bubble. We're going to be diving into why diversifying your bookshelf matters and how to embrace the discomfort that can come with it and what it really looks like to build a reading life rooted in empathy and inclusion. And before we jump in, I've got a little announcement myself. I have created my first debut novel, The Orange Blossom, and that debuts this fall. So be sure to check in the show notes for signing up to be in that email list group so you know early release dates and some really fun literary uh, events that are going to be happening with the book. So I am so excited. Without further ado, let's get into this rich conversation. Welcome back to the guest chair, Mrs. Nita Creekmore. Welcome, my dear.
I'm so excited to be here. So excited.
Oh, thank you.
And you were just talking about, I was on this podcast probably, I feel like it was like 2 years ago,
Yep, 2 years ago, right around this time.
right around this time. And so we're back. I'm back in the seat again. That makes me happy. It makes me say, okay, so maybe what I said before resonated. I can come back again.
And again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be happy.
Oh, thank you. And you know, Nita, your book has me. I have it dog-eared. I got it all like, highlighted and all the things. I mean, there's some points where, but I love how you formatted this book before we get into it. It is such a wonderful read because we get to learn more about you as a human being, as an educator, and your love emanates through all of these pages. So I am so proud of you for writing this book. And I also know if we were in the same state, same classroom building teaching fifth grade, you'd be my like fifth grade teacher bestie. But, that's another episode for another day. So let's get into it, Miss Nina. What sparked the idea of reading outside your bubble? Was there a moment or an experience that really pushed you to write this book?
And I talk about my why in my book a lot because as a Black little girl growing up, I just didn't see a lot of books of Black little girls who look like me as being like the main character in the story. Oftentimes, Black little girls were like the little sidekick or the little friend, and then they kind of were in and then out of the story. And I think there has been an influx in diverse books in the past few years. I would say in the past 10 to 15 years, it's been like an influx of diverse books. Not as much as it needs to be, I would say, are kind of on the lower end of the publishing market. But I will say this, it's been so much richness in books that I discover. And so this reading outside your bubble, I would say I started posting about more diverse books. My love for it was since college, but I started posting more and more about it in about 2016, 17 on my page, on my Love Teach Bless page. And I started using the hashtag Read Outside Your Bubble. I made a shirt about it. And the reason why I chose Reading Outside Your Bubble is because I think oftentimes people get caught up in their own circle and we don't push the limits in our reading and our growth. And I would say even for myself, like I would want to read because I hadn't learned a lot about my African American history as much as I should have in schools. And so I'm engulfing myself in that, which there's nothing wrong with that because I did not learn that in school. And I want to learn more about different cultures, different identities, the gender fluidity, and just knowing more about that, about the LGBTQIA plus community, and like just really grasping the stories behind those identities. And I too had to expand my bubble, right? And so it's one of those things that it started just me posting and me just talking about it, me integrating that as me being a coach me being a teacher leader, me being a teacher in classrooms, that birthed Read Outside Your Bubble. And the funny thing is that I was asked to write the book probably about 2 years before I actually did.
Really?
Yes, and so I was like, "Oh," I had just, I was already writing me and my husband's other book, Every Connection Matters, and I was just like, "I just don't know if I have the bandwidth to do that and that," and so I kinda took a pause on it, and then it circled back around, and when it circled back around, I said, "I'm just gonna do it," and I'm excited that I did. It was very cathartic, and as you said, like, a lot of my stories are in the book of just me as a kid, me just in my adult growth of just my learning. Um, and so that birthed Read Outside Your Bubble and all of my chapters in there.
I just love it. And that's how I was connected to your work is your Love, Teach, Bless, life on social media. And you gave me lots of ideas of books that I could have used in my classroom as well. And your love for cultural responsiveness in learning and reading. Because
Mhm.
like you said, text is in everything. And to have that and also to expand that bubble because some of us have, oh, that's a particular genre that I like to read with my students, or well, we only have this bin for certain holidays and then we put the bin away. I love how you've got wonderful strategies, to help us educators and human beings, like you say, to expand that bubble and open that ladder for learning as well. So you talk a lot about your book. I love this framework that you came up with, the LEAP framework. Can you share with our listeners and our viewers the significance of this acronym?
Yeah, so the LEAP framework is a framework I would say that I birthed, but it's something that I've been using for years that I put a name to. So the L is learning. And enmeshed in the learning is the work from Bishop, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, and thinking about, I don't think you can read inclusive and diverse text without thinking about her work. Just thinking about mirrors and windows and sliding glass doors. And I enmeshed her work in the L part because I felt like it's important of doing your own learning for yourself and how you identify and making sure that that continues. Like, and that's not something that I'm saying when you're expanding your bubble that you lose any parts of yourself while doing so, right? You can still
Mhm.
be your whole self, and all of its intersections, and also, read outside your bubble and learn about other cultures and other people outside the margins. And I started with the L. So learning can look so different for different people. But I believe, my belief is that a lot of the learning is in the books that we read, in the books that we read, in the conversations that we have with other people, and the authentic relationships that we build with other people. Because I also built that into my book about you can't do this work without relationships and community. And part of that is that learning piece. Yes, read books, but expanding your world is expanding those relationships as well. And I become a better person in expanding my relationships. And so that's the L. The E is equity and making sure that this is for everybody, that ensuring the diversity of all people, especially those that fall along the margins, the ones that are often pushed out of curriculum, pushed out, and their stories are often not told. And making sure that we include a lot of different backgrounds and perspective taking and stories, and I'm going to get to the A, but
Oh, yeah.
think about that. I think about being a kid, and I'll talk about this later too. Being a kid and learning about colonialism and learning about
Mm,
pilgrims and learning about that. And I remember distinctly thinking and wondering, where are the people during this time?
yes.
Like they're not.
Yes.
And as a kid, we did the plays and we did, you know, and then wondering about Native peoples.
Mm,
And, those are just questions that it happens in your mind
totally.
while we're learning these things. Like, where's the other stories,
Those the other stories.
And
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
making sure that equity, is there. The A is accessibility. And I put access in there because we have a lot of books in our schools, and we have a lot of schools that don't have enough books that are diverse and inclusive. And how can teachers, how can educators get these books in the hands of children? I offered off a couple of different, places that you can get books from. And it's getting easier and easier to get books. Like there's lots of grants you can write. There's lots of things. And it's just being just really intentional and proactive in that, making sure that you have access to diverse literature and being intentional about that. And then the P is purpose and professional learning. And the P stands, it's like a dual definition there because you have to root in that purpose, ground back into that purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, but also professional learning piece. That's the coach in me of making sure
Love it.
that we're teaching teachers how to do this work effectively and how to do this work without causing harm. And so I think that's very important. I think everyone should be at the table. I think we should be collaborating on how we integrate text effectively. I think sometimes we don't vet books enough. I think sometimes teachers are reading books without reading them before they even put them in for kids. And I just think just making sure we're being really super intentional about our teaching and the work of culturally responsive teaching. And I've seen so many times when we give it the name, and sometimes teachers are doing harm, and some of us don't realize that that's happening, and it ends up happening. Yeah.
Oh, and you've got wonderful graphics. You've got wonderful facilitation questions. And even that, and I tell you, honey, I highlighted a bunch of stuff, but I don't want to give away too much because I want people to buy your book, but 10 ways to vet inclusive books. And like you said, I love how you talked about with grants, especially with the access piece. When we are learning in our day-to-day as teachers, we feel like grant writing is something above us in some way. Like it's a daunting task, like, one extra thing to do. And I love how you even included all of these organizations that are looking and begging for teachers. The money is there. We can fill out a new class list. Sometimes when you get that, God bless them, the retired teachers, you get all their free books. It's like, free can come with a cost.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I always say. Yes.
But also, like, yes, and you're talking about those grants. Like, people come to my email all the time. And just like a few months ago, I have a ton of books. I mean, I've got it left me with a ton of books. So it's not like I have a need for them because I either buy them, and my husband just knows this is what happens. He just said the other day, we got to do something about all these books. Like, what we doing? Like, are we going to get another bookshelf? Are we going to?
And husband asked the same question. Same thing.
That's the thing. But just a couple months ago, I saw that We Need Diverse Books had a grant. And it was for Title I schools. And I ended up shooting the email to my media specialist and said, hey, this is it looks like it's an easy write. If you need help with anything, let me know, blah, blah, blah. We get the grant. And so she's like so excited. We get like $5,000 worth of books added to her. And the stipulation is they have to be diverse and inclusive. Yay. And so, she was excited about that. I was excited about that. And so when I say, grant writing used to be, because I'm aging myself, but 22 years in education, grant writing used to be more extensive than it is today. I will say that. But now it's like a form that you fill out. You say your why, what's your reasoning, and then you can get free books sent to you. And that's happened to me before when I was an instructional coach. We Need Diverse Books again sent me boxes of books, right? And so it's just one of those things that you have to just find it. And I put lots of resources in there for accessibility to making sure, especially, I will say, Jebeh, in this time.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And so when God placed it on my heart, this is the time to write this book. And my book came out March of this year. This book is needed.
Big time.
And I talk about banned books in one of my chapters because we need to read banned books. And we need to know policy. We need to know what we need to do as educators and teachers to be able to teach our children the books that they need and the history that they need to learn. And that's often through picture books and books that are on the shelves right now.
And you even have, what I love about you, Nita, you even had a sample letter about the discussions of the books that you have and sending it to parents. So there's no excuse. You got the form letter. It's right there with heart and empathy and equitable access to these books. And it's just, like I said, you've got a plethora of resources in every single chapter to say, yes, we need to relearn. And I love the discussion that you have with your own learning, the L part of getting that reframe of the banned books and reframing that mindset to very important books and why. And I'm not going to give too much, but she quotes a little Beyonce. You'd be like, oh, yes, we want to be in the VIB section. Yes. So there's so many good things. And I love how, because you know as I do, growing up, but with that lack of representation, like you said, and you touch on like Babysitter's Club. I'm like, yes, that's when we had Jessie. Like, hey, Jessie, she's on the cover. That's it. She had her own book. And I tell you, I read that thing cover to cover. But I love how you've got, and I say we say this all day, but you have visualization tools in this book that make you in that learning piece as an educator to go back in your own life as a learner, as a student, to really see what was missing, like you said, what was pushed away, and what did we not have our own access to that as adults we're looking for. And to my point too, there's so many teachers, you know as well as I do, being in education for many years. There's some teachers that they love their bubble. They have done that bubble since their first time. They don't want to expand, or they think this as a new initiative. And, well, I've done this unit plan. And I love how you talked about World War II, for example. And there's so many perspectives and attitudes on this, just the allied countries and other voices that you yourself as the educator researched about. And that to me, what do you say to those educators that are seeing you down the hall doing your thing and having that discussion with your students, but they're still holding tight to that bubble?
It's not easy. I will
It's
say
not
that.
easy. Yeah.
As a coach, there are teachers, we would call them resistant teachers. Teachers
Yes.
that are resistant to change. And not just, when you see resistant teachers, it's not just about inclusive books.
Well, no.
Around.
Oh, yeah.
How we've been doing it, this is the way we've been doing it, and you hear that a lot. And here's the thing, when you ask a teacher who is seemingly resistant, do you think that all children should learn?
And they always say yes.
And I always say yes. Do you think that all children belong in your classroom?
They always say yes.
Okay. And so once you get there, you're like, okay, so if that's the case, then we need to be teaching all children and making sure that they're represented in our curriculum. Now, I also talk about in my book, I have worked at a predominantly white school before where I was one of the only Black teachers at that school. Those also need those stories.
Yes. Say it again. Yes. Those students need to. Same. Yeah.
And I would teach them about the stories. And I didn't have any at that time, I had no pushback. They love learning. They wanted to learn about the different perspectives and backgrounds and stories that they hadn't learned about. And so I share that realness with love, right? And so there was a time, I will be honest, where I used to get really angry about the pushback, right? And now I can honestly say that I do it with love. And so some of the ways that you can do that is like, as a coach, I had I would say privilege with quotes to be in different classrooms. And so I would coach with teachers and I would intentionally choose diverse books to go along with whatever it is they're teaching so they can see me modeling what it can look like by integrating these books in your curriculum by way of interactive read-aloud, let's say. Right? So you're learning about colonialism. Let's say third grade was like the sweet spot for colonialism.
Oh, yeah. I can still see the paper hats. Yes.
Still see the paper hats and still see the little churning the butter, all that whole
things.
And that let's just let it go away.
Yeah. Got you.
But I would talk about, let's say I bring in the book, which is a new book. It's called Before the Ships. talks about Africans before they became African Americans. I think that's a very, very essential, because as a child, if you only hear about your culture as a Black American, African American, as you began with slavery, it does something to you.
It does. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, not that we're trying to push out the history is there. We know it. We feel it, even 300 plus years later. However, I need to hear before the shifts, because I need to know where my people came from.
Yes. Yes.
And then, so if I hear that, I'm like, we were kings and queens. We did have our own language, and we had our own customs. We had, we're over here thriving, and then we were brought. So hearing that, and then we were brought over, just like you talk about before, the 13 colonies, where they were before they came over here in the and so then I get the whole story, because then you will need to talk about Native peoples. So before colonies, what they got going on over here.
Yes.
Different perspectives in one lesson, right? But you can start by way of interactive read aloud, right? I feel like a read aloud it's like the bridge. And so once you start with interactive read aloud, then you can begin to do even more with it, right? But if someone is apprehensive, beginning with interactive read aloud is like, okay, I can read aloud the book. Okay, so how can you make it interactive? Let's read the book beforehand. I can't stress that enough, because I've seen so I'm someone that's bringing a cold read as an adult.
Oh, Rambicha. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I love interactive.
In front of kids.
You can't do it. You gotta read it. Yeah.
Read the book. And so, like, you read the book beforehand. You think about, okay, this would probably be a good discussion point. Let me think about a really thoughtful question that might kind of birth some good discussion that goes along what we're already learning about, right? I would say 3 to 4 stopping points where you're going to pause and ask a question. And if you've ever worked for kids with 2 days, they're going to pause you anyway. They're going to your hand in the midst of your read aloud, especially if they have lots of connections. And so that's a really, I feel like, less, I guess, stressful, not stressful to me, but for some teachers it might be stressful, less stressful read aloud option that's kind of like the bridge. And then that discussion and the kids collaborating and discussing and having these rich conversations, you'll want to do more. You'll want to do this more, right?
Yes.
A quiet classroom is a scary classroom. Be
energized,
discussion and us working in collaboration. And so that, I feel like that's the bridge. That's how I would offer up to a teacher. It might be like, where do I begin? How do I start? Modeling. And also, if you're not have a coach in your school, the best professional learning is a teacher that's doing it well. And coverage. Go to see another teacher in action doing this work. Take notes. Think about their questioning, his or her questioning or their questioning. Think about what books that they have on their shelves. Look around their room.
Yes.
To see the community that's built, the space that's built. To someone who's doing this work well, it doesn't just start with books. It started way back. Right?
That part. Yes.
You're thinking ahead of who's in my classroom, what do I want on my walls, how do I want my kids to feel like they belong in my room, how could they have their hand in it and make it a part of their community. These are things that are happening way before you start reading the books.
Oh, that's so powerful, Nita. And I love how in the book you talk about your community meetings. I used to do classroom morning meetings and stuff. I used to say, oh, my classroom community, but I love how you switch that to community building, community meetings. It didn't have to be in the morning, but just real quick checkpoints, sitting on the floor, calling your 5th grade seniors of the school. I'm like, oh, well, yes, it just, we do that. And I love how you talk about your past teachers in your life and how they took care of you and how you took that to heart, And again, it's just like, Mia, you are We are vibing. I just love this book. So for someone, we talked about just starting to build their diverse bookshelf, go-to tips, like you said, we can get grants. I always love too that you even said of what can I do to keep moving forward with those VIB books. If you have a little free library in your neighborhood, put some in there. And I love how you going to your school board. And, there's so many things that we can do to have that action into having more inclusive books. But before we go, where can we find your amazing work? And I'm going to put your link of your book in the show notes as well, because we need you to have this book. So where can we find Nita Creekmore's sphere of awesomeness?
I I probably have too many socials, but I am very active on Instagram. It's probably like the place where I kind of start my work is Instagram. Love, teach, bless. I am tiptoeing into blue sky.
Okay.
And so I say tiptoe because I forget about it, and then I'll be like, oh, I want to post it. And then I also am on Threads. I love teach
Okay.
bless. Facebook, love teach bless. So you can, like my students did this year. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. You can Google me. And they did. I'm like, okay, we're not doing that right now. We're learning. Hello.
Hilarious. Oh my goodness.
But loveteachbless.com is where I do blog on there fairly often. And so those are different places you can find me. And then I would also love for people to subscribe to my email, subscribe to my blog. So when you get my blog and you subscribe, anytime I post, it comes to your email. And then I also send emails out as well where you can subscribe. But I love people. And so anytime you message me, it's me behind there messaging you back every time. It's nobody else. It's Nita messaging you back.
Yeah.
I love to help people. People have messaged me and asked for help of how to become a coach, how to integrate books more, and I am very open to that as well. Some people want to bring me to their schools, all these things. So please, please, please be a part of my Love Teach Bless community. I don't look at it as followers; they're people that just support my work. And I'm so blessed and grateful for everyone.
And we're blessed to have you in our sphere. And you exude positivity and love of learning and reading. And I can't wait for folks to get your book. This would be amazing in our PLCs, everybody, and our institutes that we have going on. June is right around the corner, and this is an amazing read. Nita, I am so proud of you, and I am so happy and blessed that you are in my life as a really sweet friend, an encourager, and a fellow author. I am just so, so proud of you, and keep doing what you're doing. I will continue to support your work. And yes, what an amazing conversation we had this afternoon. I hope you are feeling inspired, everyone, as you just get to read a little deeper and wider and expand your bubble. So read outside your bubble is a must-have for anyone who wants to grow as a reader, an educator, and an overall great human being. And I hope if you love this episode, don't forget to follow and leave a review. And it helps our podcast reach way more people about culture, equity, education, and connection. And again, thank you, Nita, for joining us. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you here same time next week.